from the state of New Mexico. And it's, we get this tax credit from the state of New Mexico. We get $2.4 million to help small businesses get that expertise from the lab. So the idea, that we have so many engineers and scientists at the lab, and a company might just need some help. So the idea to bring that technology and expertise to small businesses here in New Mexico. The emphasis is on rural companies, but we help all companies in New Mexico. We can do things like testing and evaluating, modeling, imaging, testing prototypes, many different things. So, and the best part, of course, that it does not cost a small business anything. So we get that tax credit. The tax credit pays for the engineer and the scientist's time. The company, it's free for you, but we do ask that you do customer satisfaction surveys and economic development surveys, but it's no cost. So the idea, are you a New Mexico small business? Do you have a technical challenge? Maybe need some help with testing or design consultation, access to special equipment. That's one thing, Sandia, we have a lot of really expensive equipment. Do you need help maybe testing a model or advanced imaging? There's some things we don't do. We don't want to compete with commercially available services. So, we don't make websites, we don't make the apps, because we know there's plenty of companies here that could do that for you. So yeah, and we don't, we should say we don't create the prototype. The idea, sometimes you need maybe some design consultation, some work, and develop the prototype. And then once you have the prototype, we could maybe test it depending on what it is. So, and a lot of people don't realize, Sandia National Labs, we employ 14,000 people. So when we're talking about 14,000 engineers and scientists, we span the whole range. We're not just energy or nuclear, obviously. We have engineers with optical expertise, electrical, mechanical, civil, you think of it, we pretty much have an engineer in that type of background. Of course, we have people dealing with energy, whether wind and solar, of course, nuclear. We have a new department on climate change, looking at solutions for climate change. We have chemists and biologists, geologists. We have, of course, people that are experts in aerospace, environmental. Lithium batteries is another one. We have a whole department of guys and gals that are just working on lithium batteries. We have a whole building for robotics and sensors. Of course, in like material science. So pretty much whatever you might be doing, we'll probably have somebody with that kind of background. And when I talk about access to special equipment, we have hyperspectral imaging that we use for a lot of biology type experiments, electron microscopes, mass specs. We also do fire testing. We do drop zone testing. It's pretty much, like I said, Sandia National Labs, we're really into the R&D. So we have, when you employ 14,000 people, we have tons of equipment and lots of expertise. So, and we also, it's not even just Sandia and Los Alamos. We work with MEP. If you're familiar with Manufacturing Extension Partnerships, they're also an organization through our government. The idea to keep manufacturing here in the United States. So they're the experts in lean manufacturing. So especially, even manufacturing, or if you're doing process, if you're a testing lab, like Tricor and other ones, you can work with MEP to really incorporate that lean manufacturing or lean process control. We also work with the universities, University of New Mexico, dealing with the management of technology, and the School of Engineering. We also work with New Mexico Tech and New Mexico State. New Mexico State, sometimes if it's an agricultural type of project, we might work with them. But basically, by going to our website and asking for assistance, we have all these partners at the ready to help. And sometimes people wonder, what have we done in the past? I think we've worked over 3,000 projects since we've created New Mexico NMSBA. So success stories from the last year. Emerging Technology is a company in Alamogordo. They have drones, and they were using the drones to look at windmill turbines. And then they kind of pivoted and are looking at the wings of airplanes. So, the company, they're creating these drones. They needed some help dealing with the machine-based learning. So they look at the damage, they're looking for damage on these, whether it's a turbine or a wing of an airplane, to actually have some AI, some, I guess you'd call it, refining their detection techniques. So they put in a request, and we found scientists with those kind of backgrounds working with emerging technologies to help solve that problem. And once they were able to get over that hump to understand and get some help in that area, they got a U.S. Navy contract for $200,000. They hired 3 software engineers. So that's definitely success stories. The idea that we get this tax credit to help small businesses here in New Mexico, and then hopefully, your sales increase, you get grant money, you hire a bunch of people. And that's why the economic surveys are so important, so we can track that. We also work with Analytical Technologies. They're out of Farmington, another one of our success stories. Kendall, pictured here. They did a lot with repairing circuit boards for oil and gas industry, and he was planning to get into the solar. So he wanted a standalone solar charging station. So the idea for all the portable electronics, whether you have a laptop or phone, that you could charge it. So he was in the process of developing that type of prototype. And he had questions about lithium batteries and the whole design and how to increase battery life and things about maintenance and indicators. So they worked with a number of scientists here at Sandia. He was able to get over that hump, and he's created his solar panel charging station. I think there might be one downtown Farmington, and he sold a couple to the Navajo Nation. So the idea that companies have a challenge, and we're trying to at least help solve that challenge. The companies, don't receive money, but you hopefully get the problem solved, and then you can, have a whole bunch of sales and, hire lots of people. Qualifications. So the company, you have to be a New Mexico company. For profit, because we get that tax credit. That means nonprofits don't pay taxes. So that's why it has to be a New Mexico company, for profit, and small business. So small business, we're pretty much just excluding Intel. Pretty much any company here falls into the small business, and actually it's there's the guidelines. So you have a New Mexico tax ID number. We called it the CRS number. I believe it has a new name. It's a new, the newest tax number for New Mexico. That's how we track companies. And like I say, the restrictions, we don't want to compete with commercially available services. So the idea that assistance is not available through private industry at a reasonable cost. And labs, we were not providing any cash or equipment. We're going to work with you to solve a challenge. So often the deliverables are written report, testing results, and all work is done within the same calendar year. And so for what we call an individual project, it's one company that we're working with that has that challenge. That's a New Mexico for-profit business. Might need some help, testing their latest prototype, Maybe they need some imaging. Maybe they've created a model and need some help testing it. So for companies that are located in Albuquerque and Santa Fe, in Bernalillo County and Santa Fe, you can get up to $20,000 of assistance. So that's $20,000 worth of the engineer's time. So like I say, you don't get the money or materials, but you get the help. And knowing this program was started really to help rural New Mexico. So if you're outside of those counties, like if you're in Rio Rancho, you're Sandoval County, you're considered a rural county, you can get up to $40,000 of assistance of the engineer's time. And it's really used for the labor. So once again, yeah, if you happen to be in a rural county, there is possibility of a larger budget. And I really rely on the Sandia and the engineer or scientists to determine what kind of budget we need for that type of assistance. So those are individual projects. That's one company coming in and we're working. We also have leverage projects. We do this a couple times a year. Businesses can kind of come together if they all have a similar challenge and kind of pool their money together. So we had those companies down in Alamogordo. One was dealing with aerial drones. One had robotics. Another company was creating lithium batteries. So they all wanted to know about the state of charge and state of health for these really super large lithium batteries. So they came together, they wrote a little proposal. It's like 800 words. And you do a presentation and you can get up to $100,000 worth of assistance. So once you're at about 120, you're getting a team of scientists. So they had a bunch of battery experts working with them. We do those, the leverage, we do 2 calls a year, usually January and September. But for individual projects, as long as we have money and we still have funding, we get funding at the beginning of January in both Los Alamos and Sandia. We are currently looking for more individual projects. So in project requirements, you have an engineer that is kind of overseeing the project. So he's the one kind of coordinating everything, working with me, working with the small business. Of course, any project still has to comply with our safety and security rules. And project requirements from the small business, we ask that one person act as a point of contact. So then we have one person that I'm dealing with, that the engineer's dealing with. We're often getting samples for testing. It's helpful to have one person act as that point of contact. And of course, there is some paperwork. Like I say, it's free. We ask that you do, the customer satisfaction survey and economic development surveys. And then of course, there's paperwork to sign at the beginning and end of projects. So, and we've been we go throughout New Mexico. We've helped companies in every part of every county in New Mexico. In northern New Mexico, I've done a lot of some agricultural. We did cattle face recognition. I've done things dealing with water troughs. There's some rancher out there had a solar pump, the idea to break up. So ice doesn't form on the cattle in the cattle water troughs. They had the prototype. So we went up and actually went up there and put in sensors so we could monitor the temperature and make sure the ice wasn't forming. So we go throughout, all of New Mexico. And in the past, like I said, we've done almost 3,000 assistances, over 3,000 assistances. The idea, what we're really looking at, it's amazing to see how many jobs have been created or retained. That's over 10,000. That's what we're really after, trying to keep, the businesses here in New Mexico thriving. But after a project's complete, then we're going to bug you saying, did you get an increase in sales? Did you get some grant money? Did you hire someone, even someone part-time? Every year, we talk about doing away with the state tax credit. So we have to show how we're helping the small businesses so we can keep the program going. And how to apply. So yeah, here's this great free program. You can work with an engineer or scientist to solve a problem. Even though you're working with a big national lab, the application is really simple. So going to NMSBA there's the big request for assistance. So it's going to ask you, your name of the company, where you're located, your contact information, email, phone. And we really just need a sentence or two, what you're working with. Are you creating the latest solar panel? I had one woman who was working with a sewing tool. Pretty much anything. Like I said, we don't, the things we don't do the websites, we don't do apps. We're not going to create software for you. Sometimes a company's creating software and might need help, maybe with the blockchain part of it. And sometimes people are saying, well, I'm not sure if what I'm doing is commercially available at a reasonable cost. My feeling is go ahead and submit. It's a one-page application, and within 5 days, one of the business managers will give you a call, talk to you about what kind of assistance you need, what kind of scope. Then usually once we understand the project, we try to find an engineer or scientist. And usually the next step is to have a discussion. And of course, some people will say, well, I know you have, wind guys there that know all about, windmills and the turbines. And the idea is we have to find an engineer or scientist that has time. So what we say, mission work, the engineer and the scientist, their mission work does come first. So it's finding scientists and engineers that have a little more time. And I'll say most of the engineers and scientists we work with love working with the companies. Some of them are working on a satellite and they might be working on that project for 10 years. And here to come and work with a small business and actually solve a problem in 3 to 4 months. That's really, it's really great for most of the scientists. They really enjoy it. So, and, we get to do all kinds of different projects. So that's how you apply. It's really simple. And like I say, you apply and within 5 days, you'll have one of these project managers giving you a call to talk to you about your project. And I'll leave that contact information up. And I would love to open it up for questions to see if we have any questions, comments.
Yeah, so when you guys do work on the small businesses, does it entitle the labs or New Mexico to any equity or stake in the company?
No, actually. And so the idea that the assistance is at no cost. Sometimes people question, there's a question of intellectual property, right?
Yeah.
Usually, when we talk about 150 projects that we did last year, most of the companies are coming in maybe with a provisional patent already. Even if you're not, 1 or 2 companies, sometimes during the course of the project, intellectual property is created. It's really actually quite rare. There's provision it's a special case with New Mexico Small Business Assistance, knowing we're working with companies creating, the latest, greatest solar panel. The idea that if there happens to be any intellectual property created during the project, the company, you can elect title or license it. So it's a special case and it's only through New Mexico Small Business Assistance. So, and it's written, it's actually in the contract. So, but yeah, no, actually most, it's free assistance, but we ask that you do surveys, fill out the surveys for us.
Okay.
So, great question.
Hi, Judy. So,
Hi.
what about like developing like an auxiliary fuel tank for an off-road vehicle? I've actually been struggling to try to find testing facilities in the state, much less the nation. Do you guys have the ability to do anything like that?
Were you saying testing it or?
Well, testing, I mean, we've got the design and the prototype and a good lead on it, but if you had engineers that could guide us and then
Yeah,
help
if you
us
have it.
get that approved and all of that.
Yeah, the design and testing is great when you already have that done. I was saying one thing, sometimes people have a great idea, and the idea stage, because often we say that's a great idea and maybe come back when you're a little bit closer to a prototype. But, when you have a prototype, or sometimes people, have the designs and just need some help. So yeah, we have tons of engineers, mechanical, sometimes for testing different things. It just depends. We have our partners too, like manufacturing extension partnerships, do a lot of different things too. But my feeling, it's a one-page application. Go ahead and, submit, and then like I say, product manager will come and give you a call and talk to you about what you're really looking for. And hopefully we find an engineer that has time. And then usually we sit down with the engineer and talk about, what we could do, whether it's some
Awesome.
design, you have a design, it sounds like already. If you want, sometimes people, want to do some consultation.
Yeah, the tanks were almost complete, and then I started trying to figure out the best way to get them certified, DOT and highway safety and all that. And it was kind of like, oh boy, maybe we should have started here.
Yeah, well, I will say, when it comes to certification, because we're an R&D lab and through New Mexico Small Business Assistance, we don't certify. We don't say you meet the ASTM standard or a DOE standard. That's just, these budgets aren't huge, and we don't do standard, verification and that kind of testing per se. So yeah, it sounds like eventually you'd probably need some DOE testing against a standard. But the idea to do the R&D testing to get you to that level. So knowing Sandia, we're really an R&D facility.
Awesome.
But a lot of times it's really useful to kind of know. I know there was someone who was doing some testing. Actually, it was for solar panels, and they were going to have to send it away for the certification testing. But to do the R&D testing first, to know, to have some confidence that it was going to pass, save
Absolutely.
them, huge amount of money. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Judy, you said there's a cap on the funding for the projects of 20K and 40K for rural areas respectively. But is that an absolute cap, or is that just the cap on the funding that'll be provided to the state? Is like, if you needed a little more work done, or there was another thing that came up and you wanted to extend it, is there a way to do that?
Well, through this program, the caps are strict for the 20,000 or 40,000. Sometimes if we think we're going to be running up against that cap, sometimes a company, if we're going to be testing one time, we're testing some antibodies, the antibodies are really expensive. The companies actually bought the antibodies and then we tested them. A company is allowed one assistance per year. Of course, there's always, we call it, it used to be called work for others. Now it's SSP. You can pay Sandia to do testing. It costs 3 times as much because you're paying for overhead. So usually, I kind of rely on the Sandia and the engineer and scientists to say, for this amount of funding, this is what I can deliver. And sometimes, we don't know, roadblocks and things, but it's pretty much set for that 20,000 and 40,000. And then there's leverage. And
I was going to say, what roughly is a $20,000 project? Is that about a month of time?
Well, we give the engineer a couple of months to complete it. So it might be, if they're working full time, it might be a couple of weeks worth of work. And it really depends, sometimes, if you have summer students, doing some routine testing, maybe that you need, the money goes farther. So it really depends on the type of project. And I rely on the engineer or scientist. So for, usually we can find something that fits in there that we can do. I also did want to mention we have a new program called Trigger. if you're using Sandia's intellectual property, so, knowing we're an R&D facility, we have intellectual property, we don't commercialize stuff. But if you go to sandia.gov and to Los Alamos's website and type in intellectual property, you'll see a whole list of different things that we have to license, spanning, whether it's biology or engineering or energy, whatever. There's huge amount of intellectual property that we're saying, hey, would you like to come and help commercialize this? We have a new pot of money called Trigger, and you can get up to $150,000 in a year to advance that license, to help commercialize that technology. We also have things called CRADAs, which are the big cooperation agreements. You can either have a license or a CRADA. If you have either of those with the national labs, you could apply for this Trigger funding. And it's one company and accessing $150,000. It's also a state tax credit. The idea of trying to get this great technology we have to commercialize, to get it out in New Mexico. So you have to be have a presence in New Mexico. It's another New Mexico company. So,
Great.
so yeah, there's a couple ways to access.
That sounds like the next seminar.
Oh yeah, well, Trigger, like I said, is because you have to work with either have a license or a CRADA. The first thing I tell companies, go on the website, type in intellectual property and see what we have to license, because it's a huge range.
Right.
And start from there. And CRADAs, most companies, you have to have in-kind contributions for CRADAs, but if you're interested in either one of those, that's another way to access money. So
Thank you.
Yeah, and I was going to say I plan to be at Million Cups on Wednesday at 9 o'clock. And Sandia National Labs, we have an office in the rainforest. So Fat Pipe Albuquerque is on Broadway and Central. On the other side of the street is the Rainforest Building. And on the first floor is Sandia National Labs. We have an office there. So companies can come and just stop by. I'm there on Fridays. Every day there's somebody different from my organization, but on Fridays I'm there. So the idea, you can come and talk to Sandia about these programs.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Sure. I don't know if there's any other questions.
We don't have anything else in the chat. I think if Gordon and Danielle don't have anything else, that's probably it.
Well, great. I always appreciate the opportunity. Like I say, Fat Pipe is like the best office place in New Mexico. And now there's 4 locations, especially we were talking about the hybrid. You can go and, office share, 1 or 2 days a week and be home the rest of the time. And go to Fat Pipe, go to Million Cups on Wednesdays, and you can always cross the street and come and see C3 Sandia in the rainforest. We love talking to companies and seeing our entrepreneurs, see what you're interested in and how can we help you out.
Thank you, Judy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Hope to see everyone.